It's not quite yet, is it?
It is 5 o'clock.
Oh, this is,
I have one after.
okay.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
But just tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Right.
Okay, let's call the February 4th meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Here.
Commissioner David?
Here.
Commissioner Caravano?
Here.
Commissioner Brennan? Acting President Matoush?
Here. Do we have any public comments
I have not
at this
received any.
time? I don't see any cards submitted. Consent calendar.
So I think you're on the wrong, or a different meeting. There's a special meeting that's happening first.
We're gonna do the special meeting? Oh, okay,
The big
gotcha.
one.
All right. No public comment for this either. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
I think it's time to go into closed session, so now we close this out and
So just for the record, I'm going to just take us into closed session, and then we'll close this out and convene separately. So the Board of Harbor Commissioners will now convene in closed session to discuss two items. First, the board will meet pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B to consider a matter relating to public employment as indicated on the agenda. And second, the board will meet pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8 on a real property matter. The negotiators are identified as Scott Grindy and Randy Kinghorn for the district. The negotiating party with whom the negotiators will negotiate is Working Dirt LLC and Billy Daniels. And the property in question is 504 Avenue Alhambra, El Granada, California, 94018. And with that, you can go and do your business.
Randy will come find you.
So I'd like to welcome everybody back to the February 4th, 2015 special meeting. There is nothing to report out of the special meeting, and we are going to adjourn the special meeting. Thank you. And now I'd like to start the February 4th, 2015 regular Harbor District meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Here.
Commissioner Matoush?
Here.
Commissioner Caravano?
Here.
President Brennan?
Here. And at this time, we have a
Very quick
announcement.
announcement I would like to make. It was very unfortunate that during the last closed session that we had 2 weeks ago at the general meeting, that so many people were inconvenienced by a long wait. So this time we met earlier, we met at 5 o'clock today, and I think that makes a lot more sense and it's a lot easier for people to follow the meeting, and we'll try our best to do this from now on.
So at this time, we have public comment, and I'm going to call on people who have submitted a speaker slip for items not on the agenda. The speaker limit is 3 minutes. If you would like to speak on an item before the board, please fill out a speaker slip for that specific item. And I have one speaker slip from Mike McHenry.
Yeah, I just want to...
Over on the X, please. We don't have
What's
a...
that?
Over by the X, so the microphone can pick up your comments.
Oh.
We don't have a podium tonight, my apologies.
Good evening. All right, I want to distribute some information so you might have a little time to look at it. And this is just strictly educational stuff to help we have a relatively new board here, bring you up to speed and what's kind of going on in the harbor, happened in the past, and you can make your own decisions. It's just public information that might help everybody catch up, okay?
You can have, well, that's fine. You're going to hand out copies to everybody?
No, they're special.
I was going to suggest you give them to Debbie to distribute, but if you have enough copies for everybody, that's fine too.
Yeah, well, I was...
Thank you.
But I appreciate being special, thank you.
That's enough now.
Thank you, and with that, I'm going to close public comment. And next, we have the consent calendar.
I would like to pull item 1 of the consent calendar because I was not a board member at the December 3rd meeting, so I don't want to vote on that. On the meeting minutes.
I'd like to abstain from item number 2.
Okay, so 1 abstention from 2 and 1, so we're going to then move the minutes from December 3rd, 2014 to the regular agenda for new business. Is that how we do it?
Yeah, I mean, you have only 2 items, so you'll have 2 votes on the 2 items. One
Okay,
can
so-
be consent if you'd like to have a single item consent. I have no objections.
So we have 1 item on consent now. Is there a motion to approve item 1? Was it 1 or 2 that you wanted to pull?
I pulled 1.
Okay, item 2, which is minutes of January 7th, 2015 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Approve.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Abstain.
President Brennan?
Aye. And now should we go to meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2014? Did you have something you wanted to say about that?
No, I said that I wasn't a member of the board in December, and I don't want to vote on the approval of the minutes.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the December 3rd, 2014 minutes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 3rd, 2014.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Abstain?
Commissioner Mathush?
Abstain.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, and next we have new business. Item 3,
At this time, I would like to recuse myself for items number 3 and 4 because I have an economic conflict of interest because I do business with one of the fish buyers.
okay? So I'll wait till Commissioner Paravano leaves the room. Okay, so now we're on item 3, which is presentation on analysis of fees for fish offloading, wholesale purchase and retail sales, and we have a memo from Acting General Manager Scott Grindy, and there are items included in the board packet related to this.
Very briefly, first I will apologize if I do the PowerPoint wrong. I'm still learning the coordination of my finger on the button. What I'd like to start out with is that many of you recall a couple of years ago the fish buyers on Johnson Pier signed lease agreements, and those lease agreements basically had fish fees attached to the lease. So what we have here is the first report in this item 3 is what's referred to as the Dornbush report. It is in the packet as well and on our online as well. So I'll hopefully scroll the right direction here. I'm doing good already. Oh, there we go. And the print may be a little bit small, but this room is pretty small too. Okay, yeah. Basically, to start out with, the analysis was done. Thank you. The analysis was done by Dornbush, and it was completed in December 2014. And it was a study of Pillar Point Seafood, Morningstar Fisheries, and 3 Captains Sea Products leases. I kind of skipped through the table of contents, but the study was basically to the district engaged Dornbush and Associates to analyze the fees and the levies on leases who engage with fish buying and offloading, wholesale purchase, retail sales at Pillar Point Harbor. So this report, and then to do some comparison between other locations such as Bodega Bay, which is also referred to as Spud Point, Noyo, Fort Bragg, Santa Cruz, San Francisco, Moss Landing, and Monterey. So continuing on here, because I hopefully don't have to read the whole thing here. But basically what we have here is through this study, it came out that many of the fees were either fine or almost double or more than what they should have been compared to other harbors. And so what that really did was the fish buying collection is based on an honor system. And part of the process of all this, as you can read in the memo, is that what that does is that when the buyers have to submit every month what their total landings would be, and it makes it very difficult for staff as well as the buyers. We've had some errors on both sides and trying to find corrections with that. And our second report on this, on number 4, we'll come back to that, but basically there were some audit things that were found for corrections. The fish buying itself, though, the fish buyers are currently not providing the verification. This is written from the Dornbush report, and sorry if I have to read my notes versus up here. The fish buying fee collection at Pillar Point Harbor is currently based on the honor system. The fish buyers are currently providing the verification documents required in the lease agreements, and the information in the fee worksheets may not be correct. The honor system may have resulted in underpayment to fees to the district, or I think in some cases actually overpayment. To improve the fee verification process, multiple employees or contractors would be required to observe and monitor the 3 fish buying businesses during the busy season fishing events. This labor cost to provide this oversight may be higher than what the fees are that the district collects. Verification requires more contact with the tenants, commercial fishermen, and financial auditors than is currently in place. The analysis goes on further, but let's see if I can hit the right button here. The wholesale fish purchases, presently for wholesale purchase fees are $10 a ton for wet fish and 1 cent per pound for fin fish and shellfish. And for offloading, fees are similarly $10 per ton for wet fish and 1 cent per pound for fin fish and shellfish. The retail sales, the fee is 5% of gross receipts. There's further recommendations I'll come to in a bit here. The short version of a very long review and also a long study here is that the recommendation is that the district and the fish buyers and the staff and the fishermen, commercial fishermen, get together again and review this and see if we can come up with a better rate of structure that is more fair, less laborious for time, and, you know, probably more fail-safe, for lack of a better way to put it. Part of the problems obviously incurred is just, you know, I can go through this whole graph, but there's a lot of different issues, from whether someone unloaded and drained the water off before they weighed it, or whether they weighed it with the water with the fish or the squid as an example. Those are just things that can happen, and each buyer is going to do things differently. So how do you judge that for the weight? And without having observation, that makes it even more difficult. It seems more practical to find a better way, maybe a flat rate or some kind of a structure, because the fees are needed to support the fishing industry at the pier for capital improvements, to keep the docks working, the repairs, the electrical, etc., that are out there under capital work. Sorry, this print's so small on the screen. The total in fees paid, there's different dollar amounts depending on which fish buyer, but they are, you know, fairly good sized dollar amounts. And I think the bigger piece of this is, where do we go from here? And it's the recommendation of staff that we continue discussions at a finance committee, at finance committee meetings, to gain input from the fish buyers, the commercial fishermen. Bring committee findings back to the board for consideration and possible action. The one thing to remember also is that the board, or I should say the district, has a loan under Department of Boating and Waterways. So the leases were approved under Boating and Waterways. So once a recommendation is made, then Boating and Waterways has to also get involved as well. And so it's not just a one-time we change the numbers. It's how we do this so that it works for that process. And I'll just kind of scroll through here if anyone has any questions. There's a couple different scenarios in the memo as far as possible alternative scenarios for rate changes. One of the scenarios was to reduce it to $3 a ton for wet fish, because that seems to be the one that has the highest fee, much higher than the regional areas. And the second one, the reducing the rates by 50%, landing fees for wet fish from $10 presently to $5 a ton. That would put Pillar Point in line with the recommendation made in the 2013 Fishing Community Sustainability Plan for Monterey, and reducing the fee on retail sales from 5% to 2.5% would put Pillar Point more in line with percentage charged to fish markets on the municipal wharf too. There's some other conclusions here, but one of the conclusions is that a reduction in the fee rate for wet fish could have a possible impact to the overall catch brought into the harbor, with less impact to the commercial fishermen and the fish buyers. Reducing fees may result in district revenue remaining the same if reduced fees results in an increase in catch brought in. The other alternatives that were brought up was reduce to a possible flat rate or simplified fee structure, review capital funds needed, maintain safety and operational conditions in the areas used by the fish buyers and commercial fishermen. And the other option is to continue at the present rate for an additional year as study continues. And let me just scroll through these real quick so it gets on the video here.
And Scott, did you say that this presentation was going to be put on the website?
It's on the website
Oh, it
as
is.
well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just wanting to make sure I scroll through
No
them.
problem. Does the board have any clarifying questions about the report that we just heard before we go to public comment?
I do have a question. Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
So, as far as I understand, is sometimes fish buyers are also offloading the fish. So do they have to pay the fee twice?
I don't believe so. I think that,
Well, they pay
They
once
pay
if they're
one.
offloading and they pay if they're selling.
yeah, if you're like retail sales or something.
So they do pay
Yeah,
the fee twice?
Two different
rate structures for two different
things
things.
that are going on.
Retail versus wholesale.
The old lease only had a retail fee.
And just a point of clarification about the old lease, it's my understanding that that the fees required in the old leases were not paid, or let's say not paid very often. And so there wasn't any enforcement of the old leases regarding the fee structure. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I mean, they paid.
they pay.
Yeah, they paid.
Yeah, sorry, I
Well,
misunderstood you.
According to Genevieve Frederickson, our
Yeah.
past finance director, she told me that they were not paying, and that's,
I'll be happy to get that updated information from our finance.
So you
So
can-
we're not giving out inappropriate information.
yeah, if we
I'll
could
check
get,
for
if we
sure.
could get a spreadsheet from
I think
her.
that helps though too, as far as the discussion and as far as if the recommendation moved forward to get the discussion, get the questions. My goodness. Get the recommendation out there and have it to where the roundtable type meeting with finance, the finance committee, where the first one would probably be establish a lot of questions, what needs to be brought back, what are the concerns, what are the priorities of the tasks at hand. To me, that seems like a very easy thing to do, but it's more of establishing what's gone on in the past, what's presently going on, and what would be the future.
So, if there aren't any, was there another clarifying question before we go to?
Yes.
Oh, you have a clarifying question, okay.
Besides, I started out with a comment, so now I'm going to have to end it with a question so that I have a clarifying question. Frankly, I find these reports, as Dornbush and some of the other fish buying fee things, to be just extremely poor follow-up by past management and the board. Basically, I look at what Dornbush did, and it's throwing away public funds at consultants that produce incompetent work. And basically, by what I mean by that is, for instance, there's no mention of the fish purchases and sales through one of the other buyers in the harbor, who buys wholesale from the fishermen, sells retail, and does a lot of work there. Why was that not included? Pillar Point Harbor has become renowned for sales off the boat. How can we talk about fees for sales of different things and not mention the off the boat sales? So my clarifying question is, why were these not included in the study? And is there any direction to consider that?
So maybe Scott could, I don't know if you have an answer for that, Scott, because you didn't define.
I wasn't involved in the direction that was given to Dornbush, so.
So that came from the past general manager?
It came from the past general manager, or whatever direction, I assume, at this point, from the past board.
And so just from being a past board member, I guess the way I would try to respond to that clarifying question is that I think that at the time, and remember that this report, the Dornbush report, the board never requested the report. So this is something that the general manager put together on his own with the consultant. It was never brought to the board to decide whether or not the report should be performed and for the board to decide what types of things should be included in the report. Had the process been different, and if the decision to hire a consultant had been a board level decision, the criteria for the report might have been quite different, and the public would have also had an opportunity to weigh in on what criteria was relevant versus irrelevant. So I think that, you know, in looking back, it seems like the process didn't work the way that it should have, and that's why we ended up with the limited scope that's included in this report. That's the best I could respond.
It was very focused on just the 3 buyers.
So if there aren't any more clarifying questions, I want to go to public comment, and then we can come back to board discussion or motion or whatever we need to do next. So I have one speaker slip, and that is from Mike McHenry.
All right, we all know who I am. I like the way you guys are thinking. You know, I want to put all this to rest more than anybody, but it was because of our past, I'll say some commissioners and managers that did not understand the fishing business, what they were doing to us. They pitted everybody against each other by doing what they did. They're never, everybody knows that these fishing game tags are confidential. There's no way to prove it. So there's going to be always that shaded doubt, always a shaded doubt. And it's created so much animosity and fighting out on the end of that dock. It didn't have to be that way. And I would encourage the new board and whoever the general manager winds up to be in the harbor master to include the Fishermen's Association, which they were told would happen and it didn't happen. The association was lied to, and they were never included in this because there's a lot of good brains there. Everybody's involved in the harbor. It concerns them, and if you could include them in the future, I think we should all sit down, all the stakeholders, and try and come up with something where we're not scrutinizing each other. It's like the off the boat sales. Even though there's people aren't going to claim that cash. And I mean, come on, it's a no-brainer. But are we gonna hire some more people to walk down there and, you know, it's gonna be like being behind the Iron Curtain. So whatever we have to do to get things smoothed out, I really think that should be a big consideration. Anyway, let me get one of my 3. The package I just passed out is intended to bring you up to speed on some of the history of Color Point Harbor. This started when wiring for a surprise hoist, let me get my glasses on here, being installed for 3 captains completely out of the confines of the lease we had enjoyed for 30 years. Like, what's going on here? The general manager was in such a hurry to put that hoist in there, they never even put in for the permits needed to do that kind of work with either the county nor the coastal commission. Had they done things the right way, there would have been public comment meetings and it would have been reviewed, and none of us would be here talking about these issues now that have dragged on, wasting valuable time when there are so many issues that need to be tended to. When Pillar Point Fisheries and Morningstar asked the harbor master about it, he said not to worry, it wasn't really going to happen. And all of a sudden one day, bam, the hoist was going up. Myself and most of the other fishermen at Pillar Point were outraged because they said they would consult the association members and they never did. We went to the harbor master and his reply was, there's special wording in the newly signed lease that allowed 3 captains to choose any spot on the harbor for a second hoist, but not the other 2 leaseholders. Instantly I felt something was dirty. Then we were told by 3 captains that the general manager had slipped some special wording into the new lease, which when we signed it, we were not given any time to review it. When we asked for time to read it, when we were in Grinnell's office, it was thrown on the desk towards us, and the general manager told us there were people lined up to sign it, and it was now or never. The acting general manager was in that room and can attest to that. So I began digging into past records. I was mad for unloading fees, etc., and soon discovered that even though we hadn't unloaded the most amount of squid, we had paid the most in fees. So we put in for a public records request. The first report said that annually, Morningstar had paid $5,528, 3 captains had paid $1,301, and Pillar Point Fisheries had paid $37,414. I wanted to know why it appeared that 3 captains had underpaid as they unloaded much more squid than we had. And now they were to be rewarded with a hoist in the middle of the dock when we all have work from the areas given to us under the lease for 30 years. There's plenty of room in the back of 3 captains' plant to install a second hoist. If he wants one, he would just need to clean things up a bit. Get his crab tank out of there, put a squid pump on a trailer like I do, pull it out of there, and the whole place would be open. Put the new hoist back there where his old one fell down. After the 4th or 5th report we were given under the Public Records Act from the Harbor Office, these reports were all identical with the exception of 3 captains. Suddenly a check for $19,000 surfaced from 3 captains. This really made my antennas come up. We were told by the general manager the day we were forced to sign the lease, and he was going to go to the commission and request that the fees be brought in line with the rest of the surrounding ports. And we'd even have a letter stating that. He gave us a letter 2 days later, but he lied. And in fact, the commission refused to look into the facts, and even after we had given them packets with all the info several times over the period of a year and a half. Anyway, back to the $19,000 check. That just reminded me of the issue at Oyster Point. And $38,000 appeared from a drawer where they had been hidden or misplaced for months and months. Because now I'm digging, I'm thinking something's bad here. As things heated up, the general manager suddenly sends the fish buyers an audit. But there was no due date, making it open-ended and useless. Finally, this is the audit that is before you now. Fish and game tags are highly confidential, but the landings for the port are easily obtained. After getting this info from Fish and Game about how many tons of squid were unloaded in Half Moon Bay, more questions arose. With the cat being out of the bag, all eyes were now on 3 captains, as the entire port is aware of how much they were unloading. Now comes another report from harbor staff that 3 captain had paid $10,083 and $10,083.15 in April 2014, the slowest month of the year. At this point in October 2014, the general manager suddenly put in for his retirement. And we all cheered. In the board packet you will find a report that for September 2013, 3 captains paid coincidentally that exact same number, $10,083. These kinds of numbers don't repeat themselves like that. It smells very fishy once again. Now we were told by the general manager that the harbor master that we had to move our bait freezers off the dock to make room for 3 captains' new hoist. Time and time again, I asked how many feet of dock space do they get, the apron. They would never tell me. These bait freezers are an important part of our businesses. Moving them off the dock would cause great hardship for all the fishermen in our port. Guy calls in, he's got to come in, he's got 10,000 pounds of crab. He calls in, he goes, hey, I need to get my crab off, turn around, go back out, and I need 800 pounds of sardines and 1,200 pounds of squid. They're on a pallet, they're strapped up. When he comes in, the first bin of crabs comes off, the pallet's hooked up, sit on his deck, and away we go. If those bait freezers are down by Catch Joanne's, you got to get the forklift, have to stop unloading it, the boat stays under the hoist, all the way down, dig all the bait out, you're looking at a half an hour. By the time he gets back up, we could have unloaded 2 boats in that time. So, I'm just, like I said, I'm just trying to educate you. I think this was all done.
Mike, we got to wrap up the public comment. I have one clarifying question.
Yep.
Can I ask? Just for my own knowledge, not being in the commercial fishing business, why did Fish and Game, just so I understand, why did Fish and Game at some point, maybe they've always done this, or let's call it Fish and Wildlife to be correct, why did they decide to make the landing receipt information confidential? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, what was happening, it used to be public information. And as we all know, everybody has their little honey hole, their little pet spot, a reef that nobody knows about. So does Tom. He won't tell me. But that's where you get your rock hunting. You don't hit it every day. You leave it for maybe 3 weeks later. You come back, they're still there. They replenish themselves. When you hit a spot every day, they're gone. When I started fishing rock cod here, I think I was 15 years old in 1959. There were spots in the reef out there where there was loaded with lingcod and rock cod. Little by little, people would follow you out. We used all landmarks back in those days, and they'd get your marks. Now they just run around with a plotter, they find Tom, they drive by and go beep, beep, it's on their memory. And the next week he'll go down to a secret spot, there's 30 private boats sitting there. And that's why the guys started squawking about, hey, I did all the work, squid included, salmon, and I have to put that on the log and not lie or I'll lose my permit. And if Joe Blow decides, electrician, I'm going to be a fisherman, he just pulls all that up and he knows right where to go.
So
that's the reason.
On the landing receipt, do you have to are you supposed to put the locations
Yep.
where you fished?
Yep.
So that's the information they're trying to
Yep,
protect?
on the squid logs we have to, and then the block numbers on the Fish and Game tags get you very, very close. And that's why the Fish and Game goes, hey, guys are lying, we're not getting a straight scoop. So once they put the confidentiality clause on there, their information became way more accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
I understand it now. Thank you for explaining it.
Okay, and if anybody has any questions, here I am.
Does the board have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so is there any discussion about this item? Okay, I have some comments. Nobody else? Tom? No? Okay. So I appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Scott, for putting that together, and thank you to the staff that helped you. I'm not sure who helped work on that, but I appreciated the presentation. And in reading the memo, I see we have two alternatives outlined here, which include bringing this back to the Finance Committee for further study and for further discussions with stakeholders. And this is a complicated situation. It's been dragging on for what seems like years now. And I think that, I agree that it makes sense to give this further consideration, especially with an opportunity to get input from the commercial fishermen who are impacted. Try to find a solution that will work for the district so that we can come up with revenue source for infrastructure that is failing, which our commercial fishermen benefit from. I think we're going to have to be pretty creative and think outside the box. That's just my opinion. I am concerned by some of the things that have gone on in the past. For example, the letter that the past general manager sent to at least one fish buyer suggesting that the fees would be reduced, and then they were not. And then the fact that the district, paid almost $15,000 for the Dornbush study without any board approval, taking the consultant study came right up to the limit of the general manager's spending capacity. And I feel like that process should have gone through the board, and it would have been, it potentially could have saved the district money had it gone through the board. So, it's unfortunate that that didn't happen, but it didn't. I think that had the general manager picked up the phone, not our current general manager, but the past general manager picked up the phone and called the various ports and harbors that provide, opportunities for commercial fishing, it would have been easy to attain the same information included in this report for much less money. And I don't understand why this was outsourced. I think this is something that the general manager should have done himself, but we can't turn back the clock, so that's what happened. I have done a little research with reading through Fish and Wildlife Code. I did today find Code Section 8022A, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this, but it does indicate that there are concerns about confidentiality and that information regarding fish and game landing receipts cannot be made public, and it kind of goes on and on about disclosure and issues related to that. So it does seem that, maybe at some point, once further study's done, we may need to review the leases, and I understand that would involve some communication with the Division of Boating and Waterways. I have communicated with them in the past, and the division, this was probably a year ago, and the Division of Boating and Waterways told me that when they approved the leases, they were not looking at the fees, and that fees are not something that they have any interest in, but they do have an interest in making sure that the leases are, can be upheld legally. And so they're looking more for the legalese to make sure the lease is done correctly. However, there could be new people at the Division of Boating and Waterways. I don't know how that will go this time, but I think that at some point we may have to talk with them about that. So in general, I'm comfortable with the recommendation of the staff report, and look forward to the participation of the commercial fishing industry, our local fleet, and our fish buyers, so that we can develop a plan that is a fee structure that where there's accountability and where there's the ability to do verification, and where it's more equitable. So those are kind of my thoughts. Would anybody here like to make a motion?
This is an informational item only?
Well, we could refer it to the committee. We could decide as a board, could we vote to refer it to the committee, or do we not need to?
There is no vote, there's no action to be taken. I think
Okay.
it's just an informational.
I have one quick comment, if you're done.
Yep.
One thing that stood out to me or really caught my attention, and Scott had mentioned that already in his PowerPoint presentation, that the fees that are charged at Pillar Point Harbor currently are much higher than at other competing harbors. And one example that was mentioned in here is that the city of Monterey charges less than $2 per ton of wharfage, regardless of species. So Pillar Point Harbor is actually charging 10 times the fee for wholesale and offloading. So that is really a big concern, that there's such a big discrepancy between the harbors in the area. So just wanted to point that out again.
And
Commissioner, one comment just to make if I could. One thing that was also in that report, and I believe the other report as well, though, is to also remember that construction costs, for keeping our piers and everything are higher in the peninsula on that side. I see it just in normal bidding compared to the normal work I've seen of other, like our coast or bayside, the prices are higher. So it's just always an item to reflect on, is that not as many contractors are out there, so basically it's harder to get contractors without paying a little more premium.
I have a question about that. Are they higher than Monterey? Because Monterey is kind of a remote area, and I think they have some of the similar kinds of concerns.
Bigger city type complex where you're gonna have more down there, where you're gonna have more people business-wise doing plumbing, electrical, construction type work. And I think that what I see here is that unless it's a small one-man type shop doing electrical or plumbing or whatever, for the most part, they're coming from other parts of the peninsula to come over and bid the work. They're, especially like on the bigger projects.
Have you talked with Monterey just to see? I just want to make sure we're not portraying things inaccurately.
No, that's been a discussion at our California Harbor Masters and Port Captains group, as far as the costs in different places.
So they've given feedback, they think things are
Yeah,
cheaper?
just a general conversation, everybody's kind of seeing the same thing. Certain areas are higher and certain areas are lower.
Okay.
Well,
It's pretty common.
there's
It just
also
depends
the
where you are.
average construction cost index in here for Half Moon Bay versus Monterey Salinas area. Which has a difference of 6%.
The other, you're reminding me, one last thing, is that there is a mention in here of a fishing community sustainability plan for Monterey, which I believe was produced by Lisa Wise Consulting.
Yes.
And there was a recommendation regarding fees in that study, that plan. But I just wanted to clarify that that plan has not been approved. The plan was probably approved, but the fees haven't been actualized. So the fees represented in the plan have never been actualized, and I think that's worth noting. And it might be of interest to the committee to check in with Monterey on where that's at. In doing some research. So that's something that the committee could look into in the future. And I guess that's it.
Is that the finance committee?
The finance committee. Oh, and the last point I wanted to make is that because we have these fees in the leases right now, and because there is so much confusion over, let's say, mistakes that have been made with what's been paid, when it's been paid, who's paid what, whether there have been overpayments or underpayments, and the lack of ability to verify the process because of the fact that we don't have the landing receipts. What I'm trying to say is that I really don't want to see this process drag on forever, because we have this information in our leases which we aren't abiding by. We're going with an honor system because we're finding we can't abide by it because Fish and Game only provides summary information, so we can't verify things. So given that situation, I really want to, I'm hopeful that the committee can work quickly with the stakeholders to move things along so that we're not dragging this out any longer, meanwhile in this kind of unhealthy honor system situation. So I'm just suggesting that we need to move quickly as a committee and then bring something back to the board to consider, hopefully as soon as possible. That's it. So the next item is item 4, and we have a presentation on fish buyer lease revenue verification.
Yes, this is a report that was done by our, sorry, I gotta change pages here, I'm not gonna be reading right. By our auditor, JJA CPA Incorporated, and, the basic gist of this as we go through this, I'll skip through it, it's really hard to read even in the PowerPoint, is that there was an audit done of the 3 fish buyers, and it went through the process of what, sorry, these are probably too small for anybody to read unless you're standing next to the screen, but the general intent here is what the findings were. There was some, for the most part, the fish buyers were paying either the appropriate amount, or in some cases they underpaid, or in some cases they overpaid. But the descriptions were, in the findings of this report. And so part of the action of that, staff are working right now to remedy that. And, they had some I didn't see what you're pointing at, sorry. Oh, okay. Anyway, the intent though behind this is that in the report, there was analysis done, and it included the logbooks, the fee worksheets. The auditor compared fee worksheets for wet fish, finfish, and shellfish, offloaded with fee payments to the harbor district. The auditing indicates that the verification of fee payments is challenging and recommends the district outsource non-core activities. This information provided to the auditor was limited in scope for this reason of the audit, and may not provide a complete picture. And basically, what I said earlier, the fiscal audit or the fiscal impact, the audit did find that some things were underpaid and some were overpaid. And in that process, staff are working right now to bring to the next board meeting, the repayment, if there was repayment due, or to reconcile basically with those findings that were in this report. And with that, the recommendation on this was to hold further discussions similar to our past report number 3 at the Finance Committee meeting, and gain input from the fish buyers and commercial fishermen, bring committee findings back to the board for consideration and possible action. One of the other recommendations that was brought by this consultant also was that following the civil grand jury's recommendation, that we should move towards getting a property management firm to take on some of this responsibility for that activity with any of our leases, so that we have more of a third party managing that. And with that, I'll take any questions.
We don't have any public comment. Does the board have any questions, discussion?
Question.
Yep.
Scott, if you don't mind, can you walk me or the board through the process of when a boat comes in, like, how does it work? Do they have a scale on the boat where they have an
Usually you're
idea?
putting it on the scales on the dock.
So that's where it
Yeah.
gets weighed by,
Depending on our location, it scales on the dock.
okay. And, then it gets weighed by the offloader?
Mhm.
And does it get weighed separately by someone from, Fish and Wildlife?
No,
So, so basically, the landing receipts and the worksheets are filled out with the same numbers and then submitted to the
Right.
district electronically or as hard copies?
paper.
Okay,
What we get is typically, there's a form that's filled out for the type of fish and what have you. And then it's written up as a report and given to the harbor office, the pillar. And then that's put together with the billing and the amounts and all that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah,
If you look at,
yeah, one of the pages in the
if you look at
report.
page 19 of 26, you can kind of see what they're
Right,
trying
yeah.
to
Yeah.
ask.
Worksheet example is in the
Yeah.
board packet.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners? Okay.
One of the other comments I should make too is in both reports, it was common comment about the monthly payment versus quarterly, which used to be in the leases. There's benefits both ways. I think that the comment though I hear from the fish buyers is also a lot of times just they're unloading, and all of a sudden putting together everything while they're doing that is very cumbersome. And I can understand that during seasons where somebody's on vacation or something too. All of a sudden their accountant could be out, or whoever's doing the counting could be gone for a couple days, and all of a sudden the pile builds up as fish come in, and then they have to total everything and get it to the office. So I can see where quarterly might have some benefit too. It's just another piece of the discussion I think that needs to go on.
Okay. Can you remind me about that later so I don't forget? If you think of it.
I'll try.
Okay. So I did want to mention that and maybe I already said it, I did, in trying to process this report from our auditor, I called them and asked if they were able to contact Fish and Wildlife to verify the numbers included in the worksheets, which are what they reviewed in order to do their audit. And I was told by the auditor that indeed they did contact Fish and Wildlife. And you can see if you look at the page 27 of 29, there's a breakdown of all the various activities that the auditor performed and then the cost associated with each of the activities. And in there, it's teeny tiny type, so I didn't see it at first, but it says, drafting a confirmation letter to be sent to the Department of Fish and Wildlife to confirm fish offloading, half hour. Additional attempts to contact Fish and Wildlife, it kind of goes on here, the various things that they did. And so the auditor followed up by sending me the email exchange that he had with Fish and Wildlife, which was helpful. And so the way that that process worked is they wanted him to fill out a form to provide the information, and they were only willing to provide summary information. So their stance is, we can't provide more than summary information. And so the auditor made the determination that because the information was in summary form and didn't provide anything useful that they could possibly use for this audit, they decided to exclude that summary information completely from their audit process. And then, they kind of came to the conclusion at the end of their report that there really isn't any way to, verify the data. I'm trying to find the end of the report right now. And they did make the suggestion that if the district were to continue down this path, that that somehow it would have to be outsourced, or there would need to be some, observer or somebody who was verifying things, because there just isn't, we've got an honor system and you can't really ask an auditor to audit an honor system. It just doesn't work very well.
It's really just the overhead cost to do it, would be phenomenal.
So, and that's the thing, if it was studied and determined that, hiring this observer firm or whatever, I don't know who these people, I've never heard of such a thing, but if we did that, or we had our harbor patrol, take on the task of counting fish and, being at the end of the dock or the end of the pier 24/7 during the season. I mean, John's giving me a look. I don't know that would go over too well.
Sure, if you want to let the rest of the harbor go to
Yeah. So it doesn't.
free for all.
It seems like the labor involved. This is a labor-intensive activity, and I think that these are all things that need further consideration. And I agree with the recommendation that this really ought to be studied further at the committee level, and the stakeholder input is critical. That piece has been missing to date, and we, and that's part of why I think this whole thing, the whole process is broken. So if we can work with the stakeholders, the commercial fishermen, the fish buyers, and try to come up with a system that that is workable and verifiable, I think we're going to be in much better shape. So I think I've said enough about that, and we don't have to vote on this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to move on to item 5, which is commercial activity permit for Bay Area water trucks. And this is, we have a report by Acting Harbor Master John Draper. Oh, let's wait for Commissioner Paravano to return.
This seems fairly clear. Could we just vote on this? Does anybody want to hear more?
Well, I was gonna say, you have the memo in front of you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a quick question. Isn't there another company that already withdraws water or used to in the
Yes.
past for
We have a
aquarium
company called
use?
Seapure that pulls water out of the harbor, and their main customer is PetSmart.
Yeah. Is there any effects from that you've observed, or problems or concerns that you would raise? Okay.
No.
And what are the, I'm sorry I didn't have time to read this whole item, but I skimmed it and I couldn't see where it said what they're gonna do with the water. I'm just curious.
It's going to Palo Alto Research Institute.
Oh, that's right, I did see that. What, do you know what they do with it?
I talked to a couple of the researchers. They tested some water to make sure it would be okay for what the researchers are doing. They said it was fine.
Uh-huh,
I don't recall what their research is.
I
okay,
think they said, I
okay.
think it's a,
Well, no, but when I talked to them, they,
oh,
And it's approximately 5,000 to 7,500 gallons of seawater per week for 8 to 10 weeks. And do you know, I mean, I just don't know much about this. Do you know if other harbors have this sort of thing where people come and buy water?
yeah.
Okay.
There are. Seapure takes probably at least that much every week.
Okay. So it'd be about the same amount,
Yeah,
roughly?
but this is just a short term.
Oh, a short-term deal. Okay. Well, that answers my questions. Anybody else? All right, do we have a motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Item 6, additional task, Cox, Wooten, Lerner, Griffin, Hansen, and Pelos, LLP. We have a report from Scott Grindy.
Yes. Because we have new commissioners this year, I want to make sure I update kind of what's going on. About almost 2 years ago, a vessel came in called the Spirit of Sacramento. The vessel's picture is in the packet. It's a large 100-foot paddle wheeler, and it's tied up at dock 11. And when they came in, there was no recommendation issues, there was no issues at all that we had heard from past harbor masters, et cetera, where it was before. Just like any other tenant, the recommendation came in good at that time, and they actually started doing their business. Then all of a sudden, the checks turned into rubber bands, and the money was no good, and all of a sudden, the boat was stuck at the dock. And this boat was originally geared for what I'm going to say is the America's Cup events, and it was put up for sale soon after it got at our docks for around $400,000 or $500,000, I think is what the ad price I last saw. Anyway, we worked with Cox Wooten as far as working towards with the original legal action we were trying to accomplish to move towards getting the boat out of here. That was goal number one. Get it off the docks. They're not paying rent. It takes up the space of equivalently 2 boats because you got to have line on both ends of the boat. And we've been actually turning away some nice big boats that would like to stay at Oyster Point on our new dock that would actually pay the bills where they come in. And yet this boat is so large that we have no other place really to put it at Oyster Point because we do have the ordinance code where we could relocate it. We had our own tugboat, and we would have to. We have no place to put it at this point. It's kind of stuck. So where we're at now is to work towards, and what this request is about, is to get it moving further into the federal court system to arrest the boat. The price could go higher than $10,000 at this point that we're requesting, but we do not know at this point. And so where we are at, though, is that this vessel, we can either, the real 2 options here is to let it sit until they finally sell it and it goes away and we get the money from the sale because we won't release it. Or we can work to get it under the U.S. Marshals and then put it under a U.S. Marshal sale and get the funds after we sell it, you know, and that would help pay our bills. It would be an interesting auction item to say the least. One of the reasons for the difficulty is this is a federally documented vessel. It is not a California registered vessel. And so it just makes it even harder. And we run into this snag a lot with small boats because most of the credit unions and banks now, when you buy a ski boat and bigger, are now pushing for federally documenting the vessel because they can chase it down wherever it went outside the country as well. And so where we're at is we're requesting that we either, you know, with board approval to allow us to spend some more money to get this thing out of here, or for board direction to say, let it stay, we'll see if we can get them to get it to be sold, but it might take another year or 2. Good background noise.
Yeah.
They're applauding your presentation.
Oh, I would hope, yeah.
We do not have any public comment on this item. Does the board have any questions or discussion?
I do.
Okay.
Is the vessel currently still operating? Are they still conducting cruises, or is
I'm
it?
sorry, I heard you, but I couldn't hear you from here.
Is the vessel still operating? Are they still conducting cruises?
No,
currently?
no. We have it chained to the dock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've done our own, what I'm going to call personal arrest. You know, I wanted, you know, we turned the gate keys off at Oyster Point, which is different than Pillar Point for the most of the docks. We have lockable gates that are on a key fob. So their gates have been turned off. The only thing we will allow is when their mechanic comes out to make sure it's not sinking.
Right.
But no sales, nothing, because it's forcing them to sell it quicker because they can't bring people out to even look at it, to buy it at this point. Trying to hold them back and force their hand to take it away.
Okay.
Okay, one more quick question. In the staff report, it says in fiscal impacts that the district has paid legal fees to date of $9,933.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what was conducted with that?
There was a lot of work towards the marshal, getting the U.S. Marshals, but there's they had a lot of negotiations. What happened? Good question. What happened was the Cox Wooten firm is a maritime attorney firm. And so what happened is they were at the point of negotiation, a settlement. We just wanted the boat out, and we were willing to take a lower amount, just get it out of our marina. And fingers were crossed, toes were crossed, you name it, and then the whole deal they just sat, they never took it. So it was basically they're just biding our time. And so at this point, it's, I gotta I wanna escalate the process and take it over if we can, because I can't keep playing that kind of game.
Right. So the law firm has tried negotiations and now they're
Oh,
bringing
yeah.
out the big guns. Okay.
A lot of hours were spent on this vessel.
Okay.
Did you say something about if you had a tug, you would have a place to move it?
No, I said I wish I had a place to move it. The only other place I could see is to beach it in Oyster Point, but that's not reasonable, because then we're stuck with the liability of it. We don't really have a safe place because of the weight, the size. These new docks that we have, like in Dock 11, it's a concrete dock, bigger pilings, concrete pilings, and it has the strength to handle that size of boat. It's a good windbreak for everybody behind it, but that's about it, because it's a real big boat.
Tom, I think Commissioner Bernardo was waiting to speak, and then
No,
you could
please
go.
finish, I'll go after you.
I didn't see a second. Okay, go ahead. I've only got 2 more comments.
No, go ahead, and I'll go after you.
I looked and did not see it listed on Dock Street. That's a fairly common West Coast system for selling boats. Has Cox Wooten or the owner assured you that this is for sale someplace?
Well, we saw it for sale a few months ago, and we haven't, because of the transition of general manager retiring and board meetings and such, I haven't gone back to the web to look to see if it's still for sale. It wasn't for sale in this area. It was up in, Rocky, help me out here. What was that company that had it?
Up out of the Delta?
Yeah, it was up in the Delta, because this originally was up in Sacramento. So,
Yeah, I don't-
and then it came down to the Bay. But, it was online last year.
Okay.
So they may have just taken it off during the winter season or something to try to sell it. Or they figure they can't get through the gates, and now what?
I figured it also, Boats and Harbors frequently list things that are confiscated by U.S. Marshals, and those type of things, and I haven't seen it there as well. My apologies, Robert.
The bigger problem with this boat, also, sorry to interrupt here, the other part is that this boat is owned by a team of owners. It's not just one person we're dealing with. We got a group. It was a group of investors who bought this boat for investment to do America's Cup or other events of that sort. And so that just makes it even more difficult.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Yes, I'm just going to say that I am going to approve this item for the legal expenses for Cox Wooten, because here's the thing for me, it's the loss of revenue, the fact that we could be making money off of this, and then also the risk management aspect of it. Every time I take the ferry in the morning and I see that thing there, I'm like, what if something were to happen to that? I mean, we will ultimately be liable as a district, and how much would that cost? So I say let the feds, the U.S. Marshals, go after these derelict investors. I'm going to support this.
Thank you. And it is a nice boat. I mean, it'd be a great future sump office or whatever. I mean, it's got one floor that is set up almost like a giant meeting room. The second floor has got a fully stocked bar and lounge and everything. It could be an excellent I'm trying to advertise on TV here, but it'd be a great boat for somebody to buy. But the truth is that it's just a big boat. It takes up a lot of space. And we're losing money doing it.
Okay.
And I should note also, just for the record, that we did change a lot of our processes soon after that boat went bad. Credit checks and things like that, just because it needed to happen. It makes less problems down the road.
So, thanks for explaining all that. That was really helpful. And I just want to mention that we did have the law firm last time we approved money for this, and they did come in. That was last year. The board did get a chance to hear from them. And, I feel like we don't have a lot of options here. And I'm also, I also want to make sure that the district is working with the council, the maritime attorney, maybe our council needs to kind of make sure that process is going as it should. I want to make sure, you know, because we approved the 10,000 last time and nothing, you know, I know they did work and it didn't work out and they thought they had a solution, and, you know, these guys sound like they're really difficult to deal with, but I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we need to get the arrest paperwork done, get it submitted, and then it's clear to me from reading this that, you know, there is the possibility that, you know, there could be, how do you describe it? The owners could appeal the paperwork, and then that could end up costing.
They could go to court too.
Okay.
So basically, if they go to court and fight the arrest, there could be judgments against them. You know, it could be drug out. That's the problem. And I think we have to make a decision at that point if it gets that far.
So just for the public's information, I want to read the last paragraph of the letter from Cox Wooten. They say, once the arrest is complete, we will have to provide notice to the arrest to the vessel owner and any lien holders, including any banks holding preferred ship mortgages. If no party appears to contest the enforcement of the marina's lien, then the costs associated with transferring title could likely be accomplished for less than an additional $5,000 in legal fees. If someone were to contest the enforcement of the marina's liens and its ability to take title to or sell the vessel, then the costs associated with the action could increase significantly and could be in excess of an additional $25,000 or more in fees and costs. So I just want to make sure we're all going into this with our eyes open about the bureaucracy involved with the process. And does anybody have any more comments or questions, or would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve increasing the legal expense with Cox Wooden, Lerner, Griffin, Hansen, and Polios in an amount not to exceed $10,000.
Second.
Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now we have item 7, which is cancel July 1st, 2015 meeting, and we have a very short memo from Acting General Manager Scott Grindy.
Yes.
moved.
Oh, yeah.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt. Does anybody have a comment about this, or we?
I just wanted to bring up a suggestion, because we have talked about workload, manageable workloads earlier today, and I wanted to suggest that we don't have to make this decision right now. This is the first meeting in July, and I think we could basically decide that at the end of May or in June. So, and then maybe see if we can really afford to cancel the meeting, or if it would be more manageable for staff to actually have the meeting and, you know, just postpone this for a vote.
Okay, does anyone have any other comment? Okay, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
No.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, we've got item 8, maintenance to Pillar Point Harbor moorings and replacement of missing lost moorings. And we have a report from Acting Harbor Master John Draper.
All right, you have my staff report. There is one, since this report was done, we have lost another mooring. Boat broke off one of our moorings. No damage was done to the boat, so there's no liability on our part, but it just shows that the maintenance is beyond due.
And also, could I make a comment? And John, you can clarify for me, but we were talking earlier about this, is that it's a sole source because the manufacturer was selected and recommended a few years ago for the anchoring system that goes into the ground in the bay. And so that, you know, we're trying to stay with one manufacturer, one type. We know that what we're dealing with, basically. So I just want to make sure we're clarified on that.
Yeah, these are helix anchors, so they're actually screwed into the ground. excuse me, and US Mooring Systems is the only one that does those work.
Does anybody have any, by the way, there's no public comment on this item. Does anybody have any clarifying questions or?
What is the inspection schedule on these individual moorings?
I'd like to see it once a year.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? You look like you have something?
No, just a motion when we're.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
How many moorings are actually used at this time?
It's in my report, so, my board report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
40?
Well, there was originally 40
Yeah,
moorings.
40, but
I think
see
we're down to 16 boats on them. 2 of the moorings are occupied by the bait barge out there. So it's, we're down to 6, we're at over 50% right now.
And are those boats that are on the moorings, are they registered and pay fees?
Yes.
Okay. And so just a follow-up question to that, do we get people coming through from other areas that need to use the moorings off and on a seasonal basis, or like how are they used?
Yeah, during the season, during the, I guess, summer and fall. Fall's our busiest time, especially when holiday seasons. We have a bunch of yacht clubs that come down and they're 100% occupied for a week at a time.
So you feel like they're important and they get used?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Not only that, but during the winter months, they're not supposed to be on anchor, they're supposed to be on a mooring. And we have a lot of anchor outs. We'd
So-
like to see that change, so.
So it's a safety thing?
Mhm.
One thing also to mention is that, Oyster Point has a guest dock, and Pillar Point does not. One of the things that John and I have been working on is working towards getting a grant for guest docks at Pillar. So that's one of the other reasons for the moorings, is you have no place to put a guest boat if the docks are full with crabbers or other fishermen. So it's an important piece.
Okay.
Is this going to be enough money considering you need another mooring? We have to increase
In
this?
our budget, the budget will cover it. I don't know what
20,000 in the budget.
There's 20,000 in the budget, so I believe we can make it work.
And I think Commissioner Bernardo wanted to make a motion.
Yes, if it's my turn, I would like to make a motion to approve proposal from US Mooring System to do maintenance on Pillar Point Harbor moorings and replace the missing moorings.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco?
Aye.
President Correna?
Aye. We have item 9, purchase marina trash skimmer for Pillar Point Harbor, and we have another memo from Acting Harbor Master John Draper.
You have my staff report, and I'm sorry, but we have problems with our internet and our email, and I forgot to put in the actual cost of the machine itself. It looks like it's about $11,000 for the machine and $850 for shipping.
$850.
It's under my spending
It's under
limit.
his expenditure.
It's under my spending limit, but because this is a new device,
We wanted
to make sure we brought it to the board so that the board understood what we're trying to accomplish, which is under our EMS Clean Marina type program. This is the first time. I tried to find one of these when I was up in Washington and I could not, but I'd seen them demonstrated in other places but not sold. And they're all kind of a homemade. And this one allows for oil skimming as well as garbage collection. And so it really is for lack of a better way to put it, really a cool device to have. And if we can place it in the right spot, it basically plugs into a power supply at the dock. And we'll probably try it out in a couple different spots at different areas of the harbor to see how it does in different locations and which one gets the most junk collected. And if it works out well, we may even look at going further with that, because then it saves our beach cleanup teams and everything else around our area, because just a lot of flotsam and trash come in with all the different boats and people on the dock and everything else.
Do we have any questions from the board?
I have a comment. So, well, first I want to say that I really appreciate staff looking out for innovative ways to improve water quality constantly. I really, I'm really grateful that you guys do such a good job. I did some research on this trash skimmer, and there is a pilot study that was done by the Port of
Yes.
Long Beach
I talked to them.
that showed a lot of problems during their study period, where they basically had problems with the motor. They had problems with the biofouling unit that was malfunctioning, so they had to actually hire divers to remove a lot of biofouling. And in the end, they had like 6 or 7 incidents over that study period, and they terminated that pilot project with the conclusion that the unit's effectiveness and efficiency was not able to be quantified because the unit was functioning properly so infrequently, and when the unit was working properly, the Port of Long Beach Maintenance Division noted that some floating trash and debris were collected, however, the amounts were relatively small. So my gut feeling kind of is this is maybe still a little bit too new, and they have to work out, and there is progress all the time on these new technologies, and I think the direction is really going in a way. We can probably buy something that's more foolproof and maybe solar powered, within the next year, but that this might be a little early to purchase something like that could end up causing more problems than it would solve. And they actually, I think, estimated the cost for maintenance for the unit, that if they had kept it in the water, for over $4,500 a year. So it's just, there were some red flags when I read that pilot study report, and so I would be hesitant to
No,
say
and staff
yes right
appreciates the comments because it really comes down to we're trying to find solutions for a lot of the problems.
now. Yeah,
And, if it doesn't work, that's okay too. It's really, we want to make sure the board's aware, we're trying to find solutions.
I know. Yeah, but it would be good to find the right solutions where we actually save staff time instead of creating more.
Exactly.
So I think, were you done?
I'm done.
Okay. I think Commissioner Paravano had a comment?
Yes, I did. Can this be used at both facilities?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it'd be more practical to have one at each site versus trying to move it from point A to point B because it's pretty big. But the intent is, it can be used at any site really that's in the water. And it might be that we try to do a pilot with them. That might be another avenue to try it out.
For free?
Yeah, say, maybe we come up with something where we can get them to put it in, and if it works well for a year, then maybe we look at buying it.
Yeah. Well, they also observed that it broke free from the dock that it was attached to twice. I think they had installed stronger brackets, but with larger boats, and then we have in Oyster Point, we have the ferry going through.
Yeah.
Like with bigger wave action, even the stronger brackets broke, and then the unit was free floating in the harbor again, so there is just a little bit of a risk.
Oyster
involved.
Point, I think if we put it over there, we'd probably put it closer to the gate side of the docks, because that's where the junk floats. Out in the main channel, it seems to be pretty clear. Being I live there, I see it every day. I know where the junk is.
So, is there any other comments from the board? And I'm ready whenever.
I'm just leaning towards exactly what Scott said. I mean, I was going to explore other alternatives, but I think that what General Manager said, explore an exploratory program, explain to them that this has failed at Long Beach, and you make a beautiful brochure, but it doesn't sound like it works in real life. So we're willing to do a pilot program with you and some kind of an earn-out if it operates successfully.
Yeah.
So I think we have to direct further negotiations.
So it sounds like there's interest in further study. I'm just learning about this, and I like that. I really appreciate that staff is looking into solutions for to improve water quality. And since we now have a water quality committee, what's the full name of the committee?
Water quality and public safety.
Okay, maybe the committee could work with the staff to, figure out what the best, figure out what the best
Can I
solution.
make a recommendation?
Yeah.
That what we do is John and I will work with the firm to see if they're interested in doing a pilot and at what cost, et cetera, for both sides. And, or whatever it comes out of a negotiation, bring it back to that committee.
So I move to reject the purchase of the trash oil skimmer and direct staff to explore alternatives for a pilot study.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Barrera?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. And next we have item 10, bills and claims in the amount of $172,287.69. And there is a summary included in the board packet. Does anybody have any questions about the summary or input?
I have some questions. I see consistently Liebert, Cassidy, Whitmore, and I'd like to get some detail on what they're charging us for. And then additionally, I see the well-connected office, and I'm looking at just about almost 10,000, just under 10,000 a month for each harbor, apparently.
No, we bought a piece of equipment. That's what that is, I believe. We just had to buy a router. I can double check.
Oh,
You can
que-
make your copies.
Question on that, why would we buy equipment from the consultant? Why wouldn't we
We
buy,
didn't buy it from the consultant. Well, we bought it through the consultant.
why would we buy equipment through?
Because he sometimes can get a better rate for us. Most of the days, he gets a better rate for us.
Okay,
Pretty normal practice when you're working with an IT consultant. They can get better rates. They
okay.
have a relationship with the people that I'll get the, I don't know if that was on this building, but I'll get the well-connected receipts for you.
Okay, to follow up on that, I think that, one of the things, while I agree IT is day-to-day operations, which we have to have, our devices working and whatnot, this is $20,000 here, and I think that if we're buying devices that cost $20,000, and I'm not saying that's what happened here, I don't know what the device costs. I'd like to know more about what the IT is doing for $20,000, so I think the board needs to be.
Yeah, this is, I believe this was equipment, we bought 2 routers. So what we had to do, because we are going to be moving from the office, and currently we are running an antenna from our office to the Oyster Point Marina office. Plus we want to put in Wi-Fi at Oyster Point, as I was instructed to do. We had to buy routers so that could be done. And that's what these are. These are routers and the software that goes with those routers, security protection, all those things. So that's what this equipment is, so that we can break Oyster Point Marina away from being connected to us, so that when we move, we don't have to do that in May. We're doing it now so that we're ahead of the game. Otherwise, it would be chaos at the end of May.
Okay, well, it looks like there's going to be a lot of IT changes, or a lot of changes that require IT assistance with the upcoming move. It might be useful for the board to get an update from the consultant on exactly how that's going to flow.
We have no idea how it's going to flow because we don't know where we're moving to. So I don't know if where we're moving to is going to have an IT closet, if we have to create a closet, if there's already going to be wired for IT connections. He can't answer any of those questions until, and I've already told him, the minute we find the building that we're going to move to, he will walk through with us when we do our walkthrough and let us know what's going to happen.
So could, through the general manager, could that, once it's established and he's done his walkthrough, could he come and give the board an update on how that?
I think it's a lot like, it's almost kind of a version of what our cost for moving would be. Just the, furniture moving type thing. Here's our cost for the IT side of it.
Yeah, we've already let him know that it's coming and that we want him to do the walkthrough and let us know what the costs are going to be.
Okay, and did anyone else have any questions about the bills and claims?
Yeah. What is the topic, or how do we generate continuous bills with Liebert Cassidy? What are they looking into?
An investigation? There's an open.
I don't see Liebert Cassidy on here. Where is that?
Middle left.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Okay. And I think that we were gonna get an updated, or maybe we did get an updated legal fee total for 2014.
Yeah, I think that was a while ago.
So maybe we could have an attachment going forward to this report, which
I don't think
gives,
that would be a good place to put it. We can send it to you separately, because I think there's gonna have to be redactions, correct? Steve?
not the invoices. I'm just asking for a spreadsheet that shows where
Costs.
we're at with
Kind of
legal.
status of costs.
Yeah, where we're at with legal to date for the year.
Gotcha.
And then maybe do like a, show the board a comparison for the last 5 years or something, so that there's a way to see if our costs are unusually different from previous years. And if that's too complicated, maybe we just stick with the year. But that brings up the other issue, which is when we're looking at these monthly bills, we're not seeing data historically. So if, say, for example, the PG&E bill, and I don't see that in front of me right this second, but it's often on here. It's probably here somewhere. If say the PG&E bill is listed, we aren't looking to see what we paid PG&E a year ago or 2 years ago. And so how do we know? Yeah, here it is. So like, for example, there is a PG&E bill here for $2,317.94, but oftentimes there's a much higher PG&E bill. At some point, it would be helpful for the board, and maybe we don't do this at every meeting, but to have some benchmarks so we can see whether our costs are unusually going up or going down over time.
You're my boss, if I may say something.
Sure.
Hire a finance director, and you have 2 harbor masters, or 2 acting harbor masters, and you have a general manager. And all the years that I've been working for the Harbor District, they've all made a concerted effort to make sure that all the bills are not outrageous, and they review them on a regular basis. So I think that the policy is for us to have good funding and fiduciary responsibility, and I believe that the finance director and the general manager and the harbor masters have always had that. So I think for the board to take up their valuable time to review a PG&E bill doesn't, I mean.
But I think though too, that what I think I'm hearing, if you'll bear with my description, is PG&E or similar type utility sometimes could be one of our most expensive totals for the year.
Garbage is
Yeah,
high.
but you also have to remember, but stay with PG&E for a sec. Majority of our bill, probably 75% of it, is our tenants, not us. And so, you know, the peaks are going to be, you know, there's a kind of a weird cash flow thing here going on. Because like, I'm a boat owner. I have and Tom, you're probably in the same boat, and Pedro too. I see my electric bill every month for my boat, and it was like 120 during the holidays because I had some lights on it. Otherwise, it would be $80 a month. And so you see the bills go up and down, but what we, you know, if you get down to the grass or the roots of what's going on here, is it depends on if they got heaters on in the boats during the winter or if they got air conditioning on during the summer. And so you see this type thing going on all the time. And it's hard to narrow down those costs except by looking at individual bills of the boats because of the time of year. But you know, the buildings we can adjust, but we can't see a lot of the, you know, it's like, is it hot this week and you turn your air conditioning on your boat on?
So I realize there's going to be a lot of fluctuation there for a million reasons, but I think as a board, we need to look at what the costs are over time, and if we can see that from looking at it from you know, kind of a high level, we could see a trend perhaps, and what the board needs to be looking at is ways to potentially try to bring down those costs. Is solar an option? You know, I mean,
No, but I guess I was trying to say though is that some of those costs are already recoverable because the tenants are paying the bill.
Yeah.
So that information would be helpful too. So we see the cost here, but we don't
It's
get
kind of
it.
like it's almost like a graph is what you're saying.
Well, you know, like, there's no information provided to the
Right.
board that some of these costs are recovered. It looks like it's money out the door and there's no recovery of any
Right.
costs, so it's sort of misleading. So that's just something we
But
can,
that ties into the budget, and the budget it would show.
oh,
Just real quick comment, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
related to this, and this is a clarifying question. I believe right now, if I'm not mistaken, correct me please, isn't our finance director beginning the preparation for the mid-year budget review?
Yes.
Perfect opportunity, I think,
Yeah.
to bring this up and say, you know, in terms of the graphs, where are we going with operating expenses and things like that? I mean, I think that's pretty much in line. Isn't that kind of in line with what you're talking about?
yeah, and I think we need to look at it from a historical perspective, so we're
Okay.
noticing if there's anything unusual happening that the board might want to consider responding to, like, we haven't looked at solar, you know, as not.
Actually, we have.
Okay, well, maybe we
Yeah.
have, but that hasn't been brought.
No, not to cut everybody off, it's more just that was kind of why we had San Mateo County with their energy group going through Oyster Point, then went through Pillar Point. And we were doing some precursor work because we were trying to figure out if there's any available grant money, but also trying to figure out if there's any way to reduce our overhead. You know, from street lights going from regular lighting to LED or whatever else. And that's what we've been working on for the last couple of years, actually.
So that's not come to the board, but I, you
Well,
know,
it has in some
totally
ways, but not maybe as a bill.
as an item
Yeah.
specifically. So maybe, you know, and maybe that's something that will come up later. But these are just kind of questions that go through my mind when I look at these bills. And then one last thing for today, which is interspersed throughout our bills are these reimbursements from, reimbursements for employees, reimbursements for tenants. There's always like some reimbursements mixed in, and it's done alphabetically, so they're all kind of, you know, fall in here in various places. It'd be nice if we could consolidate the reimbursements to tenants for whatever, departing their lease, and consolidate the reimbursements for staff so that when we're reading through the bills, it's easier to follow.
No, I think I understand.
So things are
exactly what you're
batched a little bit better. That's just a suggestion, and that's all I have. So is there a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the bills and claims for the period ending February the 4th, 2015.
A second?
Can we get roll call?
Commissioner Gerardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
No. Item 11, we have staff reports, administration, and finance. Item 11, acting general manager Grindy.
Yeah, my report, I'll take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Nope, I have some questions. So it mentions here there was a meeting with South San Francisco staff regarding a possible event over July 4th. Is that happening, or it's up?
Yes, no.
Okay, so we don't know.
There's different event activities blending, and we'll be announcing that pretty soon. But there's a big marathon that's planned over there, and it's in the processes right now with the city, as well as, you know, the city has to approve their part because it's not just on, it starts at our place but leaves. So it's not just us, it's a team activity. We were hoping to do a fireworks event at 4th of July over there. However, the firm, the radio station Kaboom, that's a local Bay Area TV station and a bunch of radio stations, kind of came into the play late. And so all of a sudden it was too late to start raising funds for that, because the total cost for an event like that would be around 120 to 130. And so it's getting all the sponsors and everything. And we tried getting with them earlier in the year and it just didn't work out. And they came to us.
Kaboom,
Yeah.
K-Fog.
K-Fog. Okay.
K-Fog, sorry, I don't listen to all the stations, so I'm not exactly sure on all of them, but I know Kaboom's
And
contacting.
just a follow-up question on that, is that something that the city wants to do and that they might help try to
It would be something that I think everybody wants to do over there in the future, hoping to make Oyster Point more destinational type activity. And the intent is that, really, it's a perfect location to have a barge type fireworks show because it serves the whole harbor area between Brisbane, Oyster Cove, and Oyster Point.
Couldn't you just have the fireworks on that big boat over there that's locked up?
Maybe burn it.
Maybe after we get that tugboat to tow it out,
Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Next up, we have item 12, Director of Finance report.
I can take any questions for her. You can get back to.
So it's not open.gov, correct? It's OpenGov?
OpenGov.
Because I
Open,
couldn't find open.gov.
yeah. I think it's opengov.com.
OpenGov.com.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
because it's not a government agency, it's a private company.
And there's one other company that offers the same kind of services. Do you know if, I guess this is a question for the general manager, do you know if that's been looked at all? I could forward
I
their.
can look into that, I just don't know.
I could forward their info.
That'd be great.
I've got it somewhere. Not that I don't think OpenGov is a good option, but it might be good to have two. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Item 13, we have the Human Resources report from Marietta Harris.
I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
What is McCorkle Insurance?
McCorkle Insurance is who handles our insurance with us. We have always worked with them to get us our fire, all of the insurances that we have. Marine liability, pollution liability, fire insurance, all that.
I have a question, because I think you work on this, which is the insurance for boards, and I think it covers
Yeah,
staff.
the surety bond, yes.
So, while we, three of the commissioners were at a California Special District Association Leadership Academy recently, there were presentations from people that work for SDRMA, which is
District Risk Management Authority.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they're recommended by the California Special District Association, which this district is a member of. I don't know if we use them or not.
We don't.
Okay, and who do we use?
We use McCorkle.
Oh, okay, those are the people we use, all right. And so have we done any kind of comparison between,
Here, the problem with the Risk Management Authority would be that what they do is they get a group of special districts together to try to get them to buy insurance together in hopes that you can get it at a reduced cost. But what happens sometimes, it'll be a special district that has high insurance rates, a lot of problems, a lot of workers' comp, a lot of problems, and they'll go into the authority and they will raise, the rate will be raised by the fact that you have a group of special districts that have a high insurance risk, right? So they're getting a lower rate because they're in a pool with a bunch of people that have low insurance risk. And so what happens is we would probably get a higher rate because we have a pretty good insurance rating. Our workers' comp rate is very, very low, so we don't have a lot of claims, so we have a low cost. So if we were to go into special district management pool authority, it wouldn't benefit us because we have really low rates.
okay, and when is that insurance?
I've asked them to do a presentation hopefully in March because I want to get ahead of it this time as opposed to, we're usually running up against June and, trying to race it here and trying to get the race together. So they're going to get some information to me pretty quickly and they are going to come do it. What I've suggested and asked, if it's okay, if you can let me know when it would be okay, is perhaps they can do a more thorough presentation to the finance committee about how and what the rates are and da-da-da-da, you know, just more information. And then they would come back and do the major one of them.
Could we also get a presentation from SDRMA?
Sure.
As a, you know, just, and it may be that it's completely out of the question, but I think we might learn something.
Do you want that at your finance committee, or you?
That would be fine.
Okay.
You know, that sounds reasonable. And that's my only question. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, next we have item 14.
You have a written report. I just want to add a little letter of recognition for Neil McGeehan. We had an incident last Thursday night. Body washed up on the South Shore, and he was there on the scene directing traffic and helping with South City End fire until the coroner arrived. So I want to give this to Debbie to put in his file.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I was there, and I really feel that Neil did a great job. It's, you know, it's a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
And, you know, our staff, very often more on the coast side, do a lot more rescues where some people, mortality does happen to be a problem. And so when we run into this, it's not always the most appropriate time to, you know, you got the strength to deal with a lot of that.
Was Neil the only person there at the
Yes.
time?
At the time.
And how long, I'm just curious, how long has Neil been with the district?
Neil's been with the district for 10 years almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that,
He's
I'm,
getting his 10, yeah. He's getting his 10.
Yeah, that's why I sent a note to the board as I ran out the door, just so that we had some team there.
yeah, well, please pass on my thanks to him for handling that emergency. I know that must have been really challenging.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other any questions about the report on Oyster Point Marina? I have one last question. Well, two last questions. I see here you've got working on kayak rack construction. How's that going?
It's going real good. Mr. Merlot here is in charge. He should probably give him an update.
Yeah,
We're
tell us,
working on it
stand
now.
on the X and tell us about it.
Just about complete. We're doing composition shingle roof on it as soon as the weather lets us, and then it'll be complete. So, yeah, and we've moved the obstruction from the sewer line, so that's done. And we're pretty caught up. Next thing I think we need to do is probably start on our new laundry room.
So with the construction of the kayak rack, I like to kayak, so I'm really focused on that. How many kayaks is it? 12 kayaks. Okay, great. And do you have people that already want to use it? I know it's going to get
We've had a lot of
full.
inquiries, but we don't have any reserved or anything like that.
Okay.
So we're going to do 12 to start, and then if this all goes smooth, it works well, we're going to build a couple racks for the dragon boats on
Oh,
our
yeah.
facility.
Great.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes, and we can add to that.
Okay, thank you.
The Dragon Boat's been Dragon Boat's been a really good addition over there too. They've really helped. You know, Saturday, Sundays, you see them out there every day.
Yeah, it's great.
Great.
Okay, now, one last question. Could you give us an update? What's the story with the building that the bait shop used to be in? And it's my understanding the bait shop is closed.
I'd have to defer that question to General Manager Scott Grindy.
Yeah, the bankruptcy is over and done. It's ready to be leased. So we need to do a RFP to get proposals in. We have, I believe, I'm gonna say 8 to 10 people who have given interest over the last year because they knew the bankruptcy had occurred and they're trying to get their name in the line to be notified. And, you know, the inside of the building, it's basically a big modular trailer, for lack of a better way to put it. And it has a nice deck and needs some TLC on the outside of the structure as well as fixing up the deck and paint and whatever else. And the inside's, you know, pretty bare bones, but there's some freezers and grill and a few other things in there so they could do food preparation and everything else, and as well as selling food and bait and some small sundries and groceries or whatever, or have a cafe there. It really, it's an ideal location. It's got a great view and nice spot with all the people walking by on the trail, and boaters who come in that are launching off their boat.
And it's near the pier.
It's right next to the boat ramp
Yeah.
and the fishing pier.
I'm just trying to think this through. So and I've been in that building, so I know what it's like, and it definitely had gotten pretty run down over time.
Yeah.
Is the district planning on doing anything to fix it up, or is that going to be left to the tenants? I see. Okay. Okay.
Because the tenant would have to decide whether they replace it with a new one and go through all the permitting process for that, or just clean up and fix up and then see if it takes off.
So at some point, we would be looking at proposals.
Yeah.
And that type of information would be
If
included.
the finance committee says that we go that way, yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you for the report. Now we have item 15, which is the Pillar Point Harbor report.
You have my written report. There's just one change, and that's dealing with the Boeing and NOAA project. It says it's supposed to start March 9th through the 27th. The actual date is March 2nd through the 20th.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about the report?
I do have a quick question. You mentioned the sunken vessel in the outer harbor in your report.
Yes.
And I wanted to just learn more about what the procedure is after a boat sinks. Because it's still out there, and we're now 2 months later, and I think it's just getting more and more burdensome for us to do something about it and lift the boat.
I just got an email today that our abandoned watercraft fund has been approved for this year. So we can afford to float it. It is a 36-foot ferro cement sailboat. It's going to be quite expensive.
So they walked away from it?
Yeah, the lady who owns it doesn't, she can't afford to. That's why she lived out there on it anchored. That's the problem with the anchor rods.
But then we
After 30
asked
days,
for...
it's considered abandoned.
Okay.
And then we can take it under the...
So there's no
watercraft.
way that the harbor district could take action sooner, because once it's waterlogged and starts
It's a
falling
ferrocement
apart,
boat.
it's just getting...
Yeah, it's a ferro cement boat, so it's still the same shape as it was when it went down.
Okay.
We could have raised it, and then we'd have to give it back to her because it's not an abandoned vessel, and we would incur all the cost. After 30 days, it's considered abandoned.
Okay.
So now we can raise it, just get rid of it, and use the AWAP fund.
Okay.
And where is it located, just so we have a reference?
It's out in front of the old
yacht
boatyard,
club? Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah, I've seen
in
it.
the middle of the harbor,
Yeah.
dab in the middle.
It's a liability too, it seems like.
Yes.
With it sticking out halfway and...
Okay, so that's coming. Any other questions? Alrighty. Next we have item 16, which is committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
I have a quick one for the Executive Search Committee. Commissioner Matoush, myself and Brent Ives met on January 29th to discuss what agencies and their individuals should be notified or contacted directly for input on the general manager search, and that's and also discuss a general survey that we could potentially make available through the Harbor District website and at the harbors and the district office to solicit public input for anybody who feels inclined to chime in on basically qualifications for a permanent general manager. And then I just wanted to announce that the Water Quality and Public Safety first committee meeting is on Thursday, February 12th at 7 p.m. at the RCD office in Half Moon Bay. And the first beach replenishment committee meeting is on February 17th that's a Tuesday at the Hafner Bay Yacht Club at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the executive search committee. When was the date and where was the location of the meeting?
The date was January 29th. That's an ad hoc committee.
Mm-hmm.
So we
And
met.
and where was it?
We met in Napa because we were at the Special District Leadership Academy Conference, and Brent Ives was one of the presenters there, or instructors. So that was the best time to get all of us together.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear who attended this?
Commissioner Matoush, myself, and Brent Ives.
And nobody else?
No.
Okay, I have a question regarding the location. I think this is the first time that I can recall that a harbor meeting took place outside of the county. And I'm just wondering whether this set a precedent that is going to raise some flags in terms of jurisdiction for conducting agency meetings that are county-wide.
So I'm happy to answer your question. I'll get back to you. I don't have an answer for you right now, and specifically with regard to an advisory committee. I would just hate to give you a wrong answer, so I think I'd like to just check and make sure I can do it right after the meeting if you like.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I have a couple comments about committees, but does anyone else have anything first?
On the Administrative Office Committee, we're looking at one property, countering one group. No decision has been made. We visited some other properties to examine square footage requirements and so on, but no decisions have been made.
So, two other things. There is a communications and marketing committee meeting scheduled, and I can't think of the date in February. 16th, which when it was scheduled, I was not aware that was President's Day. So that's the date that it's scheduled, and it's at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club at 7 p.m. They're going to provide tea and coffee for anybody that wants to show up. It is a standing committee. It will be noticed. It's open to the public, and there'll be an agenda coming out next week so that the public has plenty of time to review the agenda in advance of the committee meeting to better understand what we're going to cover there. And again, it's at 7 o'clock at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club, February 16th. And then there's also a finance committee meeting in the works, but we haven't pinpointed the date and time and location yet, but it's looking like that finance committee meeting, and this would be the first finance committee meeting, would probably be in late February. And so we'll be updating hopefully at the next meeting with more specifics. And that's all I have for committee reports. Does anyone have anything else?
I have a comment.
Okay.
If I could ask of the committee members, because each one has two members, but it doesn't really point who's the lead point for each committee. It would really help staff if we could have the committees notify Debbie and myself so that we're making sure if you set a time and a place and whatever, just so we make sure we have it nailed down so we get on the website and all the other things in a timely fashion.
So just to clarify, you're looking for one of the two board members?
Well, at least it's kind of like who's the lead, making sure, the chair of that committee. That's basically the only thing it helps. So we at least know if we're sending some information also, who's the chair of the committee for that committee.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense what I'm saying.
It does, and I also, I think it makes sense because maybe we want to list that in the agenda, you know, who the chair of the committee is. I haven't given it much thought yet, so I want to think about it. But I also wanted to mention that, because you're bringing up communication, and as the committees are doing their work, there are times, and I'm sure Scott knows what I'm talking about, when committee members want to see documents that are relevant to potential discussions at committees, and that does put a burden on staff to try to find those documents. It also, I've noticed, creates a situation where sometimes there's overlap between two committees, where two committees are actually asking for the same document. And we had that happen recently with a document that Lisa Wise had produced and then an edited version that the finance director was working on. And two separate committees were interested in seeing that document. So that was of interest to the strategic planning committee as well as the finance committee. And I think going forward that it would make sense to, instead of putting staff through the exercise of trying to send these various documents to different committees, as documents are requested, I would hope we could figure out a solution where we could, because the documents I'm talking about are public records, we could put them on a cloud server or somewhere where the committee members could go and access those documents themselves versus having to email staff and ask for the same thing over and over again. You could just check the server and see if the document's there, grab the document, download it. So I'm hoping that going forward we can try to find a smoother way so that if a document's provided to one board member, it's provided to all board members. So we're not doubling up our efforts and board members aren't aware of a document that might have been useful. So I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not saying we need any solutions right now, but I think it would be helpful.
I think we'll probably bring back a response of where we put it in whatever next meeting. So
And what makes,
what makes sense for staff too.
Okay, thank you. So next we
Excuse
have.
me, Commissioner Brennan, if I just could for a second,
Oh,
I
yeah.
can now just confirm what my thought was in response to Commissioner Parvano's question, which
yes.
is that an advisory committee is not considered a legislative body under the Brown Act, and so its meetings are not subject to the jurisdictional requirements that apply to agendized regular and special meetings of a legislative body. So there's no problem under the Brown Act with the meeting happening the way it did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item 16B, which is commissioner statements and requests. One, the Board of Harbor Commissioners may make public statements. Do I have anyone that wants, and this is not a time to ask for future agenda items. This is a time to make a statement, and we will have requests for future agenda items following this item. So does anybody have a statement that they'd like to make?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to acknowledge the receipt of a letter from the Midcoast Community Council that the board received on January 28th of 2015, outlining regarding the Pillow Point RV Park and outlining a couple of concerns regarding public coastal views, Surfers Beach day use parking lot, public restroom, and light pollution. So I wanted to thank the Midcoast Community Council for writing the letter and addressing the board, and also wanted to suggest a meeting, since this doesn't really fall under any of our committee work, wanted to suggest that I would volunteer to meet with a member of the Midcoast Community Council and the leaseholder as either a board member or a member of the public, but start some communication and just see if we can find, discuss some productive solutions before we narrow down issues that need to come back to the board for decision. But I would be more than happy to facilitate and get started on this before, it becomes a more a bigger item before the board, that I could, start working on this with communication and some efforts to outreach.
Could you, since the public is watching the meeting, could you explain what the letter is? Just give it a summary of it.
Yeah, the Midcoast Community Council was approached with some concerns from the public regarding the coastal views, and I think it's in regard to the larger cypress trees. that line up along Highway 1 and that block the ocean views. And I think there was actually something in the contract that suggested California bayberry shrubs that would be a lot smaller. So maybe trying to find a solution for that. Also, the public restroom is an issue, whether these required the existing bathroom to be maintained and open and accessible, and it is not. So, I think there are 4 or 5 issues that are mentioned in the letter and that we could get started on without bringing it to the board. But I don't know if I'm looking to you, Steve, if I need to have a vote for that, or if I need to, I don't really know if I could just offer that,
So this is a portion of the agenda for you to make a comment and a statement. It's not the time, if you want it in the next session, I hate to follow formalities, but there is an opportunity to put something on the agenda if you'd like the board to take action to support or direct.
But the question is, do I need the board vote and approval to then start a meeting? Do I need to agendize this?
Can I comment quickly and then correct me if I'm wrong? If any commissioner can go have a meeting with whomever, you don't have to have permission to do that, but you cannot make any agreements or anything.
Decisions.
Yeah, you can have a meeting. Is that accurate?
That seems accurate.
But I can also understand why you'd want to mention to the board that you plan to do that.
Would like to do that and facilitate the process, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other reports?
Statements.
Say,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to work backwards. A couple of statements I was not able to make at the last meeting on January 21st. First of all, I'd like to welcome Commissioners David and Mateusz to the Harbor Commission. I didn't get a chance to welcome you. Secondly, there was at the January 21st meeting, there was a comment made by a member of the public that criticized the lack of minutes from the December 3rd and January 7th meetings, and basically saying that they're late and what's the reason for the delay. And I would like to respond that our harbor staff has been under a tremendous amount of demands for putting on a special meeting. There was a lot of vacations that was going on during the holiday periods. So I would like to say that staff has responded by issuing the minutes from December 3rd and the January 7th meetings. This other statement that I would like to make is that with the committees that we have, and if the intention is to include members of the public on these committees, we do not have a policy for selecting members of the public for being members on the committee. So we should be looking at criteria, qualifications of members of the public that are interested for being members of the committee, of the Harbor Commission committees. I've noticed in the last couple of meetings that there has been a change in the staff reports. From the staff reports that have been issued, they're sent out in the packet, and then the following Monday or Tuesday, we get a revised staff report. And I would just like to ask if I could have an answer as to why we're getting revised versions of staff reports. To me, a staff report was sent in the mail. It was in a part of the packet. And what is the rationale behind revising and editing staff reports? And that has happened for the last couple of meetings. In terms of our last meeting, Acting General Manager Grindy had responded to the amount of time that he's spending at work as between the 78 to 80 hours. I would like to get a written report from from him regarding a little bit more itemization of how the 70 to 80 hours work week is being distributed. And that way I have a much better understanding of what the demands are upon his workload and how it's affecting the operations and management of both facilities. There is also a question that I have regarding the flow of emails. And it seems to me that in order to afford us a better transparency in terms of seeing what is going on and requests that is being asked of staff, that once a commissioner asks a question to the general manager, that the response be given to all the commissioners. I'm not saying that there's going to be any discussion or saying that this is right or wrong. It just gives us a better idea and grasp of the flow of emails that are going on between commissioners and staff. And I think that those are my statements. Oh, yeah, thank you.
So I was going to conclude with a statement. I would just find asking Scott to produce a report that's going to document what he's been doing that's been overtaxing him to this point is counterproductive, because when we're trying to reduce his workload, now we're going to give him another task and pretend that this doesn't matter. This report doesn't count because we're asking you to document what you did before, although we've already given you the green light to reduce your workload. So while I admire which way you're going on this, and it's great, but I just find it counterproductive that we'd ask Scott to go back and tell us what he did for the past couple of weeks. And it's a waste of his time when he could be doing something moving forward productive rather than being retroactive analytical.
Any other? Okay. So I'm going to start with email. I just want to say in my report that I get a lot of email, like sometimes 500 emails a day, and I really do not want to receive email that isn't pertinent to something I'm working on. So I would not want to have every email that the staff sends to a particular commissioner also. I would not want to be copied on all that email. I've got enough email to process as it is. So that's just speaking for myself. And then I do agree that requesting additional reports on workload is incredibly ironic. And I just find that interesting. I also would like to comment on a issue that came up at our last meeting where a member of the public maintained that our fish fires were not paying their electrical. And I'd just like to follow up by saying that I got an email from staff, actually from Acting General Manager Scott Grindy, that clarified that the Harbor Patrol had gone out and checked to make sure that the fish fires were hooked up to their electrical correctly. And I'm not an electrician, but I guess they each have an electrical panel, and that they were hooked up to their electrical correctly, so that that was incorrect. So I just wanted to clarify that our fish fires are paying for their own electricity, in case there was any lingering questions about that. And then, let's see if I have anything else here. There's, well, no, I'll save that for later. I did want to report that there have been a lot of IT issues with the Harbor District's email. and I'm having trouble when I go on to the Harbor District's email system to send email to a particular staff member or board member. The email only allows me to use a couple of addresses, and other staff members' addresses I can't put into the to area, so I can't send the email. And I know this sounds like a little nitpicky thing, but when you can't communicate because the email system doesn't work, it's really hard to get anything done. And I have spoken with our our IT consultant. I believe he is trying to come up with some solutions for this problem. It seems like a very odd problem, and I can't figure it out because I've never had any problem like this before with email. And at this point, I'm kind of leaning towards, because the Harbor District staff uses, I assume, district devices, the board uses personal devices, and at this point I'm kind of leaning towards thinking that at some point down the road the board may want to consider doing something different and perhaps using staff devices so that they can be supported better by IT. But I'm not, at this point, 100% sure on what would make the most sense. But those are just things I'm kind of thinking about. So that's it for my report. And next we're going to go on, if there isn't anybody else, we're going to go on to commissioners wishing to place items on a future agenda. Do we have any? Okay.
Not sure exactly how to approach this, but we've already brought up the bait shop at Oyster Point, and I would like to, I'm very concerned about the delays and the amount of time it's taken us to get the RFPs out. So it would be really nice to see the next agenda item, or just even if it's informational, just to say RFPs have been issued for the Oyster Point site. In a similar vein, we have a problem with a leaseholder at Pillar Point Harbor. And I believe that somehow we should devise a plan, and I don't know if this has to be agendized or not, that either notice to vacate or perform. So we do have an issue with a vacant site that's a revenue opportunity for the harbor that's not being utilized to its fullest extent.
So are you requesting
I'm requesting the Pillar Point lease be examined. I'd like to see something on the agenda that says we're following up and we're going to move forward on this lease one way or the other. And at the same time, I'd like to see something proactive done with the lease at the bait shop at Oyster Point, or the building, whatever it's going to be in its next life. So those two items.
The present bait shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're requesting two separate agenda items, or you want those wrapped into one item?
Could we wrap it easily since they're
It's
both?
easier. I think it might be easier to put one by one just because of discussion.
Okay.
Two items?
Yeah.
Okay, so should we take one first, because we have to vote on it? Which one do you want to take first? Pillar Point or Oyster Point?
Would you believe that it's more convenient for you, less work, to do Oyster Point?
It'd be nice to get that one rolling fast.
So you want to
Okay.
put a priority on that one?
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to take a stab at the framing the agenda item, or do you want help with that? The motion.
We need a motion now?
You're putting an item, you're asking for an item to be placed on.
I'd like to move that we see the RFP and its follow-up results listed on our, next meeting?
Well, it would actually be that we'd bring the RFP to the packet next meeting.
Okay.
And then the results would be after the board said, yes, go for it, and then
Let
bring it
the
back.
motion be amended as such.
Okay.
Okay, and can we get a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Peravone?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, do you want to do your second one?
Very similar. What is the best way to approach the leaseholder and require compliance with the lease that they've been in violation of for the last 2 years? So do I need a motion to say that somebody's gonna approach them? Do they just need a letter? Or are we gonna require them to come in and document why they haven't performed on their lease? And how do we get them to either put up or shut up?
Well, I have an idea. What if we got an update, because it's been so long since this, I don't remember when that lease was approved. Could we, I'm just,
Probably an informational update first where it's at would be my off the cuff bluff, your first thought on this one, because so the status is provided, and then I don't know, I require closed session as well
so,
for action.
so the open session item would give the leaseholder an opportunity to come in and speak to the board.
Exactly.
So it would be, are we making motions on closed session items here?
I don't think that would be, that's not traditionally what you've done. I can't think it's specifically prohibited, but I'm not sure it's really
Necessary.
Necessary or the best way forward. An informational item would not be a closed session item. What I heard the general manager suggest was to place on the next agenda, or maybe I've heard wrong, but a future agenda, an informational item regarding the status of the property at Pillar Point. I guess it's the Princeton Cafe.
And since it's a revenue item, the sooner the better on that informational update.
Okay, so are we clear? Do you want to refer?
I just am not sure, Commissioner Ritush, that there is enough information before the board to actually provide direction to the general manager on what to do without him first providing the information to you, I guess.
Well, this gets back to the poor guy drinking from a water hose. You know, it's like we're gonna give him time off, and now we're gonna, there's 5 people that are gonna hand him 10 items and say, good night, sleep well.
That is the problem.
Well, that's why I went first.
Okay, so you put your priority item out there first.
Yeah, and then we've gotta get the Pillar Point Harbor lease rolling, or we've gotta put it out to bid.
So are you going to make a motion to have a informational report on the Pillar Point Harbor lease?
To be honest, that really sounds weak. Is there anything we can do a little faster? We have a lease that's clearly never been complied with since month 1, and it's about 2 years old.
You looking to me or to Scott?
I'm looking at you.
I'm not comfortable, without having reviewed the lease, making a comment as to whether or not the lease terms have been violated, or whether there's breach, or whether there's grounds for any action. I'm not sure that, nor is this perhaps the right time to have that conversation, given that the item was not agendized for this meeting. If you want to put something on the agenda for a future meeting, this is the chance to do it, but I'm not sure that I know. It's not for me to say what that agenda item should be, so.
So if there was an informational report, you could then provide additional information at that
I need a
time.
motion for an informational item as well. Okay, I'd like to move an informational item of the lease update and performance standards for the vacant unit in the row of shops.
Okay.
And that's not a closed session item?
Well, I'm assuming you mean an informational item from
Well, we have to see the
your acting
lease.
general
We'll
manager,
find out.
Randy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It may well be, I mean, you know, or in the ordinary course of affairs, your general manager would take action to administer contracts and leases in consultation with your general counsel, and report to the board as necessary when there's need for board action to approve a recommendation. It sounds like you would like to have that happen now, and I'm suggesting that maybe the board needs more information before that step.
Well, that's why I asked for the informational item, and I would think that he would be providing the board and you with the lease. We're gonna have your discussion on your view of fulfillment of the lease, and we'll be able to have board discussion on how to propose to agendize it, to take it further and make something happen.
okay, that makes sense.
That was a pretty weak nod of agreement, but.
Well, I'm not sure just how much information I'm going to feel comfortable. I'm not going to feel comfortable giving you privileged attorney-client advice in an open session, but I think I hear you wanting an update on just the status of the lease and what the lease says and what's happened to date, and these are all just matters of public record, and that's
Yes.
something that I think your general manager can provide.
Excellent.
Okay, any other requests for future agenda items?
Just say, I just want a quick comment. I am not going to add any more agenda items because I'm sure staff has enough agenda items at this time, so I'm not adding any. Thank you.
I think we need to vote on
Yes.
this last one.
Oh, shoot. Thank you. Is there a second on the motion?
I second.
Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Peravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, now, did you have?
Yes, I have one item. Speaking of RFPs, I would like to revisit the item number 7 from the January 7th meeting, which was titled Discussion, Possible Action, Consideration, Approval, and Direction of Staff on the Process of Hiring an Executive Search Firm Consultant to Conduct a Formal Search for General Manager. I would like to revisit this and see if the commission could have done a better way and a much more transparent way of approving the hiring of the executive search committee or firm that it did choose. And the reason that I bring this up is after reading the staff report, there's a couple of things that just don't connect, are a little bit confusing in terms of chronology and timing. The date of the staff report is December the 23rd, 2014, and the date of the proposal from the executive search committee or firm is January the 7th, 2015. So apparently there is a lapse in time in terms of when the staff report was done, which included the executive search, the recommendation for hiring the executive search firm, and also in the letter it says it has been requested by my firm to provide this request. I would like to ask questions regarding how was this request transmitted, and why in this staff report that we received, there was only one proposal that was submitted. It's my understanding that if the commission had undergone an RFP process, the commission would have had a much better choice, a wider choice of firms. It could have possibly seen if there's a firm that is out there that could have saved money. For example, I am aware that the mosquito control abatement district just went through a hiring of a general manager, and they spent $25,000. And I believe that we are spending $37,900 for this firm. So I would like to revisit this as possible way of doing business that I think that the public would appreciate a little bit more understanding of why the district or the commission did not undergo an RFP process.
Anything else?
No, that's my only request.
Okay. And just as a point of information, I want to mention that the January 7th, 2015 special meeting is on the PCTV YouTube channel, and any member of the public and any board member or staff member can go to the YouTube channel and watch the full special meeting and or go right to that section to see what happened during any agenda item.
Can I make a quick point of clarification that might be helpful?
Okay.
I also know that the price that headhunters charge is a portion of the starting salary for the person they're trying to hire. So I don't know exactly what the general manager for the mosquito abatement district makes, but maybe there is some information there for the proposal cost.
Okay, so I'm also concerned about the number of requests.
Excuse me for one moment. I just want to clarify. Was there a motion? Did you make a motion to put an item on the agenda?
Oh, yeah.
Not yet, no, I did not yet. But, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we revisit the RFP process from the January 7th meeting, January 7th, 2015 meeting, to see if there was a better way that the Harbor Commission could have conducted its decision on approving the executive search firm that it did choose.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
No.
Commissioner Mathush?
No.
Commissioner Caravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
No. And
I have a request too.
oh, thank you for telling me. Please go.
So, the Coastal Regional Sediment Management Plan, which is a collaboration of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and the Army Corps of Engineers with local jurisdiction and stakeholders, they developed a draft plan that reflects regional needs of coastal stretches between Moss Landing and Pillar Point. And I would like to move to agendize a letter to the Coastal Regional Sediment Management Plan suggesting the inclusion of surface beach as a pilot project for board decision and vote. And I would provide the memo with all the background information that the board would need for the project. And I would provide the draft letter for the board to discuss and make a decision on. So this would be at no extra staff time and would probably take up maybe 10 minutes of the meeting time.
That was your motion?
The motion was to agendize a letter to the Coastal Regional Sediment Management Plan suggesting the inclusion of surface beach as a pilot project for board discussion and vote.
Second.
I'm sorry. Just so we can get it down.
Sure.
What is the name of the?
It's the Coastal Regional Sediment Management Plan.
Thank you.
I know it's a mouthful.
Can we get a roll call?
I'd like to have a question for the motion.
Yes.
It is my understanding that Surfers Beach is not under the jurisdiction of the San Mateo County Harbor District. So I would have trouble supporting this.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
No.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathush?
Yes.
Commissioner Caravano?
No.
President Brennan?
Aye. Any others?
Yeah, I would like to use the opportunity as a quick reminder, a friendly reminder that I'd asked on the first meeting, January 7/15, for an update on Romeo Pier solutions, and it has been identified by many, including the Harbor Commission, as a serious concern for safety and water quality if larger parts of the creosote treated structure collapsed. So I would really like to take this opportunity again to say I think we should move forward as soon as possible. And this was a request, I think, for an informational item so the board can follow up on where things were left at and possibly start up correspondence with the Coastal Commission regarding possible demolition, at least of the building and the two hoists that are falling apart that are still on there, and the deck. So that would be great to get that.
Yes.
We have a list of work at the main office and we're keeping track of all these. It's kind of,
Okay.
how do we fit them in?
Yeah, no, I am.
So that's, just so you know, we haven't forgot you.
And thank you for keeping track like that. I know that we're like super backlogged, so I understand that. And I appreciate that Commissioner David is going to help out with producing a memo or whatnot
Mhm.
for her, the new request she put in tonight. And at the at the January, is it my turn now? We're all good? Okay. At the January 7th meeting, I put in a request for a PowerPoint presentation or a report on the facility survey, which was recently complete for Oyster Point Marina and Pillar Point Harbor. I know that's a big task, and I kind of, I've been thinking about how this could go. It kind of makes sense that it would come from the consultant, but I don't want to cause the district additional revenue or additional money, sorry, in having to drag out the consultant to give a presentation on their survey, but maybe they were planning on doing that anyway, so that's kind of a question for staff. Were they?
I'll check if it was in their budget, but I do not believe it was.
Okay, so if you
But
could,
what I can suggest is as an informational report, because it's also on our list, that maybe the two get tied together. Maybe it may not be next meeting, but the following, as two informational reports, because they really link together in a lot of ways. Moffett Nickel did the facility condition survey, also did the report for the Romeo Pier.
so the two could,
Yeah, there's basically, synergies in putting the two side by side as far as the discussions of facilities. And,
and I would volunteer, just putting this out there, that if the staff could use some help with putting together a PowerPoint on the facilities survey, that I'd volunteer to do that. Those are pretty dense reports, so that PowerPoint could get pretty crazy, but I'd definitely be willing to take a stab at putting together a PowerPoint if that's helpful. So I think I'll just wait to hear.
yeah, just in general thought, I think that the hardest part is the facility condition survey is pages of just stuff.
Yeah.
It's line by line, like looking at a counting sheet. And I think it's really looking at the highlights of what our highest priorities are.
Pulling out the highlights.
Really, and that can be done because I have to look at it from a perspective of what is the priorities there. And the Romeo Pier update, I'll get back to you as soon as I get some more questions.
And thank you for that point, and that was why I kind of hesitated. I didn't want to start working on anything because I'm frankly don't know what the highlights should be. So it really should be coming from the staff, but at the same time, I also realize we are completely backlogged. So with that, we have adjournment, and I should just say that the next meeting is going to be held on February 18th at the Municipal Services Building in South San Francisco at 6:30. My understanding is there might be a special meeting on February 11th, but I'm not sure yet if that's happening, which would be a site survey or a site visit of Johnson Pier and at Pillar Point Harbor. But I don't know the time, and I can't confirm the date yet. So that would be posted on the district's website as a special meeting. So anybody interested in attending that special meeting should check the website to see if that gets scheduled or not.
I think also we'll check the weather beforehand just to make sure we don't get lucky with rain.
Yeah, check the weather too. So the website and the weather. And can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.